Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Ramanaaya. Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be beginning to talk about the Śrī Aruṇācala Akṣaramaṇamālai, which is the very heart of Bhagavan's teachings. Bhagavan's whole heart was poured out into this beautiful, beautiful love song. And it is such a work so deep, both in devotion and in meaning and implication. I don't pretend that I can even begin to do justice to it, but I will share some ideas about it. But I mean, some of them are ideas I learned from Muruganar's commentary. Many of them are ideas I heard from Sadhu Om, and others are ideas that occurred to me. But there's no limit to the meaning that we can find in this work. Many verses are so deep in meaning. For many years, we may be viewing them in one way, and then later on, suddenly one day, a new meaning may reveal itself to us. So I don't think anyone can, it is possible ever to write a definitive or give a definitive explanation of this work. There will always be more to be discovered in it. Bhagavan often said, Bhakti is the mother of jnana. And to tell the truth, though people generally consider Bhagavan's path as the path of jnana, it is equally well, or even more so, the path of bhakti, because the path of jnana, as taught by Bhagavan, is the path of self-investigation. And we cannot begin to investigate ourselves without thereby surrendering ourselves, without thereby surrendering this ego. That is, the nature of ego is such that it rises, stands, and flourishes, attending to things other than itself. But if it tries to attend to itself, to see who am I, it begins to subside. And if it looks at itself keenly enough, it will sink into the very depth of the heart and lose itself in the infinite clarity of pure awareness, which is Bhagavan and which is Arunachala. So the connection between bhakti and jnana is brought out very clearly in this song. Also, when we are trying to practice Bhagavan's teachings, we come across so many obstacles in the form of our own Vishaya vasanas. That is, Bhagavan often used to say, the spiritual path is a battle in our own heart, in our own will, between our Vishaya vasanas and Sat vasana. Sat vasana means the inclination or love just to be as we actually are. And we can be as we actually are only by attending to ourselves. Whereas Vishaya vasanas Vishayas means phenomena, objects, anything other than ourselves. So Vishaya vasanas are inclinations or liking to attend to other things, to experience other things. So the whole spiritual path is just a battle between these two opposing types of vasanas or inclinations. So anyone who is sincerely following this path will face so many obstacles, not obstacles from the outside world. We can't blame the outside world for our problem. It's obstacles within our own mind, our own liking to go outwards. So this is what the spiritual path is all about. And because we all face so many obstacles, inner obstacles in the form of our own vasanas, this song is the greatest of aids to us in this path. Akṣaramaṇamālai welled up spontaneously in Bhagavan's heart one day when he was doing Giri Pradakshina. Generally, it is the context in which Bhagavan composed this song, how it is usually narrated in books and how it's usually understood, is when for many years, when Bhagavan was living in Virupaksha cave, there wasn't any regular cooking going on. In early days, Bhagavan used to go and beg his own food. In later days, once a number of sadhus were living with Bhagavan, a group of sadhus, 2 or 3 sadhus, would go and beg food and bring it back and share among all who were present in Virupaksha cave, which is where Bhagavan was living at that time. Most of the time he was living in Virupaksha cave, except during the very hot months when he would go to, I think it was Mango Tree Cave, which was cooler in the very hot months. But I mean, he was living in the caves on the hill. So when the group of Bhagavan's devotees went for begging food, they used to sing Tamil devotional songs, Shaivite songs. So people would recognize them, and people were hearing them. I think Paramaswami or one of them used to blow the conch when they started from Virupaksha cave. And then when they came to whichever street they were going to beg in, they would blow the conch and then start walking down the street, and people would come and offer them food. Observing this, there were other sadhus on the hill who started imitating them, blowing conches and singing the same songs. So people often mistook these other groups as other groups of sadhus as Bhagavan's group of sadhus. So there was some competition. Even in the spiritual world, competition goes on, such is the nature of the world. They requested Bhagavan to compose a song, and Bhagavan said, "No, there are so many good songs by Tamil Shaivite saints. There's no need for any more songs." So Bhagavan was declining. But then at about the same time, one day when Bhagavan was going around the hill, these verses started to well forth from his heart. And I think it was at about the same time that Bhagavan had been composing the verses of Arunachala Patikam and Ashtakam. So knowing that Bhagavan may compose verses while going around the hill, I think it was Parani Swami who was accompanying Bhagavan that day. He had brought paper and a pencil. So when these verses started flowing out of Bhagavan's heart, he gave the paper and pen to Bhagavan. Bhagavan started to write them down. And Bhagavan was so moved as these verses were coming. It wasn't with any conscious effort on his part. The verses were just pouring forth from his heart. It is said that the paper on which he was writing became wet, with his tears. He was so emotional. And according to most accounts that we hear from old devotees, in the course of that one production, Bhagavan composed all 108 verses. However, it is recorded in Day by Day. Devaraja Mudliar recorded on, when was it? On the 7th of December, 1945. He recorded it as if Bhagavan said, Marital Garland of Letters, that's Śrī Aruṇācala Akṣaramaṇamālai, was composed partly at Virupaksha cave and partly on my walks around the hill. Many old devotees I spoke to were under the impression that Devaraja Mudliar had got mixed up there. But what Bhagavan said was composed partly on his walks around the hill and partly in Virupaksha cave was Arunachala Patikam and Ashtakam. That is, Arunachala Patikam, the first verse had been, or the opening lines of that song had been coming to Bhagavan's mind, and he kept on putting them aside, thinking, what have these words got to do with me? But the words kept on coming to his mind. And eventually, one day he decided he couldn't stop them anymore. So he wrote the first verse that came, as I say, spontaneously came forth from his heart. That was while he was doing Pradakshina. And the next day, the opening words of the next verse, which were the final syllables of the previous verse, the first verse, became the first syllables of the second verse. So the second verse started coming to him like that for about 17 days or so, consecutive days. One verse would come. First, the 11 verses of Arunachala Patikam, and then in a slightly different meter, the first 6 verses of Arunachala Ashtakam. And then someone wanted to, at that time, I think Akṣaramaṇa had been already composed by that time. So someone wanted to print all of these. So then Bhagavan composed the final 2 verses of Ashtakam to make it up to 8. So those were composed partly on his walks around the hill and partly in Virupaksha cave. Whereas Akṣaramaṇamālai, the impression most old devotees I spoke to, the impression they had was that Bhagavan had composed it just while walking, just in the course of one production, Bhagavan had composed all 108 verses. That seems more likely because when we see the flow of verses in Akṣaramaṇamālai, it's very, very clear. These were not just a little bit written here, a little bit written there. They were written in one continuous flow. It is possible, but maybe Bhagavan had not composed all 108 by the time he completed the production. So he may have composed the last few verses while after returning to the Virupaksha cave. But most of the verses, at least, we can, I think we are right in believing, but they were all composed during the course of one pradakshana. Maybe he completed the whole thing before completing the pradakshana. So I think probably, as I was told by several old devotees, Devaraja Murli had got himself a bit mixed up when he recorded that. But of course, these things don't matter, but these are just minor historical facts. But the fact is, I mean, when we see the nature of Akṣaramaṇamālai, it's Bhagavan's whole heart is pouring out into that. It is such a wonderful, wonderful work. So, and though it is said, but though it is often connected with that request of the sadhus who wanted a song to sing while going to beg, and though they took this Bhagavan's composition of Akṣaramaṇamālai as an answer to their prayers, that wasn't, we can't say that was the main reason why Bhagavan sang this. Bhagavan sang this in a flood of pure love and devotion. That is very, very clear. We can see that very clearly from the verses themselves. It is. It was not just as a song for begging. It was that Bhagavan was pouring out his heart to Arunachala. However, he did humorously remark one day, Akṣaramaṇamālai fed us for many years. That's been also recorded in Day by Day. That certain Bhagavan often used to say like that, but it fed them for many years. But that wasn't the reason why he composed it. In later years, often people used to ask Bhagavan about the meaning of the verses. He would always decline to say. He would say they could work out the meaning as well as he could, because it wasn't with any thought that he had composed all these. They had just welled up from his heart as a torrent of pure love. Even Muruganar asked Bhagavan, when Muruganar was writing his Tamil commentary of Brittivarai on Akṣaramaṇamālai, he was in some of the verses, because they give room for a number of different meanings, he wanted to know what was the meaning Bhagavan, which was the intended meaning, but the meaning that Bhagavan intended when he sang the song, those particular verses. So, but when he asked Bhagavan, Bhagavan said, the one who composed this has gone. If you want me to decide the meaning, I would have to break my head. So you may as well break your own head and decide whatever you think the meaning may be. So from this, it's clear, firstly, that Bhagavan had no sense of doership in doing all these things. So he didn't feel, I am the one who has composed this song. It had just welled up and come out of his heart spontaneously. secondly, I think another reason why Bhagavan declined to explain the meaning of the verses is many of these verses are intended to have are intended to be open to interpretation in different ways. So Bhagavan didn't want to limit the scope for devotees to see different meanings in them. If Bhagavan had said, this is the meaning of the verse, or this is the meaning he had intended, that would mean all the other meanings would be somehow relegated. People would say, oh, no, that's not really what Bhagavan meant. But Bhagavan didn't want to specify what he meant because these verses are intended, somewhat, not all of them, many of the verses have just one meaning, but many of the verses can be interpreted in a number of different ways and on a number of different levels. So Bhagavan didn't want to define or limit the meaning. We are fortunate to have Muruganar's commentary, so we can see the meanings that appeal to Muruganar. But we can't necessarily say, oh, because this is the meaning given by Muruganar, this is the correct meaning, or because Muruganar didn't give that meaning, that's not a correct meaning. No, Muruganar, in many cases, he explained different meanings that could be taken. In some cases, he gave the meaning he preferred as the main meaning, whereas others may prefer another meaning. So just because Muruganar preferred one meaning of one verse, for example, there's a verse, Koval Kanya, Kodumaya Padita, that refers to the Koval Kanya. What it suggests is, the Koval means the sharp sword, and Kanya means those who have eyes. The most obvious meaning is that it is sung from a male perspective. It's referring to the seductive eyes of women. So I should not fall a prey to the seductive eyes of women. That meaning didn't appeal to Muruganar because he felt Bhagavan is singing this song in Nayaka Nayaki Bhava. That's Bhagavan taking himself to be the bride. So how can the bride talk about the seductive eyes of women? So he gave another meaning to it. But that was his attitude. Many other devotees feel, no, Muruganar was going too far there. So, but there's no right and wrong in these things. These verses are intended to be open to interpretation, and a meaning that may appeal to us at one time, or may appeal to one devotee, may not appeal to another. So these songs are songs of love. So they can be interpreted in many different ways and different levels of meaning, they're also suited for different states of mind. In a certain state of mind, one meaning may appeal to us, whereas in another state of mind, another meaning may appeal to us. So this is why Bhagavan didn't want to define any meaning. It's open to interpretation. And there may be so many meanings that we may not strike us at first, but may later strike us. One day, all of a sudden, some new meaning may come to our mind. These are verses that are to be sung, to be meditated upon, and to be they have to be a constant companion to us in the spiritual path. Through these verses, Bhagavan has given us so much practical guidance and practical support for the inward journey of self-investigation and self-surrender. Though these verses are they're printed as couplets, that is 2 lines, actually, technically, they are 1-line verses. They are 1-line verses. Each line consists of 7 metrical feet, but because that's a bit too long to print in 1 line, they're generally printed in 2 lines, but actually they're 1-line verses. So they're very simple verses, very, very brief verses, but they're extremely deep and rich in meaning and implication. And as I say, they express the very heart of his teachings. Whereas in many other works, such as Nana, Uludunapadu, Upadeshundia, Ammabide, Ekama Panchakam, and so on, he explains in a clear and systematic way the fundamental principles of his teachings and the means by which we can know and be what we actually are. In Akṣaramaṇamālai, he guides and supports us in the practical application of these teachings and in facing all the obstacles that we will inevitably face on our inward journey. As I mentioned earlier, Bhagavan often said that the spiritual path or spiritual journey is a battle within our own heart between our sat vasana and our vishaya vasanas. So it's a struggle for any sincere aspirant will admit, but this is a struggle. But we naturally have so much inclination. It's the nature of ego to have inclination to go outwards. As Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Uludunapadu, Urupatri undam, grasping form, it comes into existence. Urupatri nikam, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri undu mika ongum, grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. Uruvittu urupatram, leaving form, it grasps form. So grasping form, that means that form means anything other than itself. That is the very nature of ego. So when we are turning within, we are going against our ego nature. And nature of ego is always to go outwards. But though we are going against ego nature by turning within, we are our real nature, our actual nature, our Atmaswarupa, the nature of our real nature is never to attend to anything other than ourselves, always to be as we actually are, as pure awareness. So by trying to turn within, we are giving up, surrendering our ego nature and restoring our real nature. Not that our real nature needs restoring, it's ever as it is, but we are returning to our real nature, we can say. So this spiritual path is definitely a struggle, and we can see this struggle expressed by Bhagavan in so many ways in this song. And this is why he said, Bhakti is the mother of jnana, because without overwhelming, all-consuming, heart-melting love to surrender ourselves entirely, along with all our vasanas, all our desires, our likes, our dislikes, everything, without that willingness and that love to surrender ourselves, we can never succeed in going deep in this path, in sinking deep within our own heart, deep enough to lose ourselves completely. So bhakti is absolutely essential. Bhakti means love. Love is the key to success in this path, and that's why prayer plays such an important role. Because that is in Akṣaramaṇamālai and other songs of Arunachala Stuti Panchakam, Bhagavan has taught us how and for what we should pray. If we pray for what Bhagavan is praying for in this song, we are aligning our will with his will. In other words, we're surrendering our will to his will, and thereby we are helping to dismantle the obstacles to complete surrender that we've erected in our heart by liking and desiring so many other things. So in these verses, Bhagavan is teaching us how and for what we should pray. And of course, he's teaching us through words. But prayer is, of course, much more than just words. Words can serve as a vehicle for prayer, but prayer itself is an intense longing and crying out from the innermost depth of our heart for our return to our return home, to our natural state of infinite, indivisible, immutable, pure being, pure awareness, pure happiness, and pure love, which is what we actually are. So in this, as I say, in this song, Bhagavan is teaching us how to pray. That means what we should be longing for, what we should be aspiring for when we're on this spiritual path. And because to go deep in this spiritual path, our love needs to be very deep and intense. Bhagavan expressed the depth and intensity of his own love for Arunachala in this song by singing it in Nayaka Nayaki Bhava. Nayaka Nayaki Bhava means, Nayaka means Lord. Nayaki means, in this context, a young maiden. And Bhava means the devotional attitude. So Nayaki Nayaki Bhava is the devotional attitude of a young maiden whose heart has been stolen by her beloved Lord and who therefore yearns cravingly for him, wanting nothing else but to be united with him in eternal and indivisible oneness. The young maiden in this case is Jiva, the soul or ego, and her beloved Lord is Shiva, Lord Arunachala, who is God, Guru, and Atmaswarupa, the own real nature of Jiva. So that is why there are so many marriage illusions or allusions to this, to the love of a young girl for the Lord of her heart, the one who has stolen her heart. This is expressed in so many of these verses of Akṣaramaṇamālai, and it's also why this song is called Śrī Aruṇācala Akṣaramaṇamālai. This title of this song is a very deeply meaningful title and a very, very appropriate title for this song. Śrī Aruṇācala obviously means it's referring to Arunachala. Akṣaramaṇamālai is a compound of three words: Akṣara, Mana, Mālai. Akṣara, in Tamil it's Akṣaram. It's a Tamil form of the Sanskrit word Akṣara, and it becomes Akṣara in compound. The primary meaning of Akṣara is kṣara means to be destroyed or perish. So Akṣara is what is imperishable, indestructible, indissoluble, or immutable. That's the main meaning. A secondary meaning of Akṣara is a syllable or the letter of a syllabic alphabet. That is, in Tamil, Sanskrit, and most Indian languages, they are syllabic alphabets. They have characters that represent syllables. Whereas in English, for example, a syllable like ka would be K-A, two letters in English. In Sanskrit or Tamil or most Indian languages, it's just one letter, because the letters represent syllables rather than individual the components of the syllables. Akṣara means a syllable or the letter of a syllabic alphabet, because it is how this word came to mean a letter in Vedic philosophy. A lot of importance is given to sounds and consequently to the syllables that make up words. And so the syllables are considered as something imperishable. So they're called Akṣara. So in this case, Akṣara has two meanings. One is imperishable and another is a syllable or the letter of a syllabic alphabet. The second word is manam. Manam, and it becomes mana in a compound. It's a Tamil noun that means union, particularly union of lovers, or marriage. It also means fragrance. And it's derived from the verb mana, which means to be united, come together, marry, embrace, unite carnally, or to emit fragrance. And the third word, mālai, is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit word mala, which means a garland. Therefore, Akṣaramaṇamālai has several meanings. Firstly, it means a marriage garland of syllables. And it's so called because in an Indian marriage ceremony, the bride and bridegroom exchange garlands. That's a very important part of the marriage ceremony, is the exchange of garlands. So Bhagavan is weaving this garland of verses for his bride, for her bridegroom, let's say, Arunachala. And in the final verse, he prays for the exchange of garlands. Mālai taruṇācala Ramana Maharshi. He's praying to Arunachala, accept my garland and give me your garland, the garland of immutable union. In this case, the bride is Bhagavan, and she's making this garland of flowers in the form of verses to adorn the neck of her beloved bridegroom Arunachala. And because they're arranged, that is, the verses, the first syllable of each verse, they're in alphabetical order, or by and large, except for a few verses towards the end. So that's why it's called the Bridal Garland of Syllables, because it's in that alphabetical order. So that's one meaning, marriage garland of syllables. It can also mean, because mana can also mean fragrant, it's also a fragrant garland of syllables, because this marriage garland of verses composed by the bride is suffused with the sweet fragrance of her intense yearning and love for her bridegroom. And thirdly, and most significantly, it means a garland of or for imperishable union, because the marriage for which Bhagavan is praying in this verse, in this song, is the state of eternal, imperishable, and immutable oneness with her beloved Lord Arunachala Shiva. So Śrī Aruṇācala Akṣaramaṇamālai means the marriage garland of syllables for Sri Arunachala, the fragrant garland of syllables for Sri Arunachala, or the garland for imperishable union with Sri Arunachala. It can also be taken to mean the garland of imperishable fragrance for Arunachala, because Arunachala is eternally adorned with the sweet fragrance of Bhagavan's all-consuming love for him, as expressed by her so beautifully and heart-meltingly in these verses. So this title has so many meanings, and they're all so fitting. So in this song, Bhagavan is praying for divine marriage or imperishable union with Arunachala. But obviously we know from Bhagavan may have composed this song around about 1912 or so. We don't know exactly, very different dates are given in different books, but it was around about 1912. That is maybe about 16 years after he had already attained that imperishable union with Arunachala. That is that day in Madurai, when that intense fear of death arose in his heart, prompting him to turn back within and take refuge in the fortress of the feet of Mahesana, as he says in the second Mangalam verse of Uludunapadu. Mahesana is a great Lord Arunachala Shiva, who always exists and shines in the heart as I am. So that marriage for which he's praying had already been celebrated and consummated on that day in Madurai. So in this song, the bride is reliving the anguish and joys of her former state of intense longing for him. But here and there are verses in which it's very, Bhagavan clearly refers, but what he's praying for so longingly has already been bestowed upon him in its fullness. So that is these verses of Akṣaramaṇamālai, there are many prayers, heart-melting prayers, but there are also verses in which Bhagavan is also expressing in the ecstasy of love. He's expressing all that Arunachala has done for him, including, I mean, it's clear from those verses that that state for which he is praying has already been bestowed upon him. So Bhagavan and Arunachala are one. From that day, we can say, if we look at it from the outward life of Bhagavan, we can say on that day in Madurai, when that intense fear of death arose in him, that that marriage or eternal union with Arunachala was celebrated and consummated. But actually, when ego merges back in its source, it's not that we are then newly united with Arunachala. Then it is revealed that we are never anything other than Arunachala, but our union with Arunachala is eternal. It has no beginning and no end. So Bhagavan is eternally one with Arunachala. Though when we view his outward life, it seems that up to the age of 16, he was an ordinary boy. And then that fear of death came, and he then merged back within, and then he became Bhagavan Ramana. That is only from the external point of view. Inwardly, Bhagavan and Arunachala are always one. And that is expressed beautifully by Bhagavan in the verse that he composed when he was asked who he is, whether he's this God or that God. Bhagavan sang this verse, Ariyati tarajivara dahavari jugoheyil, Arivairami paramattuman Arunachala Ramanan, Parivalulam Murugan nala Paranandi guheyandu, Arivamviri tiravanijam, Arivai adubeliyam. The meaning of this verse is, Arunachala is the Paramatma, rejoicing as awareness in the cave of the heart lotus of different souls, different jivas, beginning with Hari. Rejoicing as awareness, Arivai Rami, means he's always shining blissfully in our heart as that fundamental awareness I am. So that which we are all aware of as I am, that is Arunachala Ramana. That is what we actually are. And so, but how to experience that, how to make that an experience, he explains in the last two lines of the verse. Paribal ulam uruha means heart melting with love. Nalaparanandidu guheyandu, reaching the cave where the sublime supreme dwells. That is, with our heart melting with love, we need to turn back within and reach the cave, the very innermost depth of our heart, where Bhagavan dwells. When we do so, Arivam Viri Tirava, the eye that is awareness opening. Nijam Arivai, you will know. Nijam means what is innate or what is natural. In other words, our own real nature, which is the indwelling Arunachala Ramana. We will know that. Adu Veliyam, it will be exposed, or it will be, Veliyam means it will come out. That implies it will be exposed, opened, disclosed, or made clear, meaning that it will shine forth, devouring ego. So Bhagavan has revealed in this verse his true identity. He and Arunachala are one. They are that which is ever shining in our heart as the fundamental awareness I am. And to know him as he is, we need, with a heart melting with love. This is the really important thing. Parivalulamuruha. Without the heart melting with love, we cannot go deep enough within to lose ourselves completely in him. So this is what, so though in this song, Bhagavan is singing as he is the bride and Arunachala is the bridegroom, they are eternally one. So it is Arunachala himself who has revealed his greatness by taking the form of Bhagavan Ramana and singing his praises in this song. So this is such a beautiful, beautiful love song. And in fact, this is the supreme love song. I don't think there's ever anywhere in the world, I mean, there's so many great devotional songs have been sung by so many saints, but the depth and intensity of love expressed by Bhagavan in this song. And it's completely self-effacing, self-sacrificing love. The love that is the highest form of love is to give ourselves entirely to the object of our love. The object of our love is Arunachala, who is our own self, who's ever shining in our heart as our own real nature. So with this supreme love song bestowed upon us by Bhagavan as our guide, support, and solace, let us each persevere in our attempts to turn back within and sink into the innermost depth of our heart, where he is always waiting to swallow us in his clear light of pure and infinite awareness. So I spent quite a lot of time on the introduction, just to give the background. What I want to talk about today is firstly the pāyiram, which is the introductory, very beautiful introductory verse composed by Muruganar, which is always sung at the beginning of Akṣaramaṇamālai, and then the kāppu, which is the invocatory verse that Bhagavan sang, addressed to Ganapati, and then the first verse. So my talk may be a little bit longer today to cover all of these. Before I explain the meaning of Muruganar's pāyiram, because I can try reciting it, but I don't have musical singing, so I'm going to first play Sadhu Om singing this verse. This is the pāyiram or introductory verse composed by Sri Muruganar.
Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi Śrī Aruṇācala Akṣaramaṇamālai. taruṇā ruṇamaṇi kiraṇā taruma ஷரமண mahiṛmālai teruṇā ḍiyatiru vaḍiyār terumaral teḷiyap paravudal poruḻāhak karuṇā தரமுனி ரமணாரியம் உவகையினால் சொல்லியது கதியாக அருணாச்சலம் என்ன கதமே அறிவோடும் ஆழ்வார் சிவனுலகாழ்வாரே.
So this is the pāyiram sung by Muruganar. What this means is those who sink in the heart with awareness as Aruṇacalam will certainly rule the world of Shiva. And how do they sink in the heart? Having this song as a means. So those who sink in the heart with awareness as Arunachala, taking this song as a means, this Akṣara, Muruganar describes it as kṣaramāṇa mahiṛmālai. Mahil means, it's got two meanings. One meaning is joyful, another meaning is flower. So we can take it to mean this joyful marriage garland or fragrant flower garland of syllables. Or we can also take it as the joyful garland of immutable union. And then he describes it as taruṇā, ruṇamaṇi, kiraṇā, valinihar, tarum, which gives light like a series of rays of the newly risen sun, and which is composed by Karunakara Muni Nayakan, Karunakara Muni Ramanan Aryan, that is the noble sage Ramana, who is Karunakara, the abundant giver of grace. That he sang with joy for the sake of, as a prayer, so that the delusion of good devotees who seek clarity may be cleared away. So those who sing this song those who sink in the heart with awareness as Aruṇacalam, with this song as an aid, will certainly rule the world of Shiva. that is the meaning. I'll explain it. I'll go through the verse explaining it. The first line is taruṇā ruṇamaṇi kiraṇā valinihar tarumakṣaramana mahiṛmālai. So he's describing this akṣaramaṇamālai as taruṇā means young or youthful. In the case of the sun, it means newly risen or just risen. Aruna means sun. Mani means a gem or jewel. So ruṇamaṇi means the sun, or it literally means sun gem. So it's implying the sun as the jewel in the sky. Kiraṇā means a ray or beam of light. And āvali means a series. So taruṇā ruṇamaṇi means a series of rays of the newly risen sun. Then the next word nihar has a double meaning. That is, often Tamil poets will use words with double meanings, and we're going to use this word with a double meaning. The normal meaning of nihar is likeness or similarity. So we can take it to mean like. So this song is like the like a series of rays of a newly risen sun. But there's more to it than that, because nihar also means shining or luster or brightness or light. And the next word is tarum, which gives. So which gives light. So Muruganar is saying this song gives light like a series of rays of the newly risen sun. It's a beautiful description. As I will explain later, but many of the words in this verse, Muruganar has actually borrowed from the third verse of Aruṇācala, like taruṇā, aruna, the newly risen sun. That's one word, and other words also he has taken from there. So there are many allusions in this verse to other verses of Bhagavan, particularly that third verse of Aruṇācala Akṣaramaṇamālai. So they say which gives light or which shines like a series of rays of newly risen sun. That is the description of this Akṣaramaṇamālai, which, as I say, he describes as Akṣaramana mahiṛmālai. And again, mahir has a double meaning. Mahir means joyful. It also means a flower. It's a particular variety of flower. So it means. Well, I've already explained the various meanings of Akṣaramaṇamālai. So this can be taken as we can take this, it means both a joyful marriage garland of syllables, and also, or if we take it in that sense, the mahir, the joy, implies the infinite joy and bliss of uniting eternally being one with Arunachala. And it also means, because mahir also means a flower, it's also a garland of fragrant flowers in the form of syllables. That is, each verse in this song is a beautiful, sweet-smelling, fragrant flower that is grown in the heart, that has sprouted in the heart of Bhagavan, we can say. So with flowers coming from his own heart, he has woven this beautiful garland, this beautiful, sweet-smelling garland, this garland of supreme love. And when Muruganar says it gives light, the light that is given by this song is the light of pure awareness, which dispels the darkness of ignorance from the hearts of those who look deep within themselves, seeking the clarity of that light. So, as Muruganar implies in the next clause, which is teruṇā tiru vaḍiyār terumaral teļiyap. Terul means clarity or clear knowledge. Muruganar explains it as in his commentary as being meyonavu. Meyonavu means real awareness or awareness of what is real, namely I am. Nadia means who seek, and Muruganar explains who seek means who earnestly and intensely desire. And because in order to know what we actually are, we need to have such intense love for this. And since having such intense love for the clarity of pure awareness is the greatest of all blessings, Muruganar describes those devotees who have such love as ḍiyatiru. I translated tiru as good, but actually it has got much deeper meaning than good. It's a lot of words it's difficult to convey in English. Tiru means what is blessed or sacred, but devotees who have such love, they are blessed because there's no blessing greater than the love for true clarity, for the clarity of pure awareness. And adya means a devotee in the sense of a humble slave or servant of God. And terumaral means distress, confusion, or delusion. And here it's referring to the primal delusion, namely self-ignorance, which rises as ego. So it's ego is the delusion that needs to be removed. And finally, the verb teļiyap means to become clear or be cleared away. So terumaral teļiyap means so that their delusion may be cleared away. So this song is sung so that the delusion of those good devotees who always seek clarity may be cleared away. Since the delusion, this delusion is the darkness of self-ignorance, namely ego, which is the adjunct conflated awareness, I am this body. Since it's a false awareness of ourself, it can be eradicated only by the perfect clarity of pure self-awareness. And such clarity can be found only by looking deep within one's own heart, which is the light of pure awareness that always shines devoid of adjuncts as I am. Therefore, what we are seeking when we investigate ourselves by looking deep within is this absolute clarity of awareness that we actually are. So the phrase teruṇā, who seek clarity, is very apt and significant. It is also another phrase that is an allusion to what Bhagavan sings in verse 3 of Śrī Aruṇācala, in which he uses the word nittamum taruṇādu ullatinil, which means in or with a heart, but always seeks clarity. What Bhagavan says in verse 3 of Aruṇācala is, Arunachalatilu karunakara paramanarunara vindapadamei poruļāhak sutram modu varunadi patriolam marulnad sut marul marulnadal atrunitamum taruṇādu latinanal teruṇādu latininal arunadi nikumaba irulnasa muttu buvimel tarunāruna giri tarunāruna kadir irul kadirin arulna sorry, because I'm a bit dyslexic. Sometimes if I forget the words, I have difficulty reading them. So, yeah, sorry, I'll read it in a split form. That'd be taruṇā aruna kadirin arulnalum utru sukum varuna ḍiyatiru. That is, they will, okay, I'll read the meaning. With a heart that always seeks clarity, being bereft of desiring, or any form of desire, and of the mental delusion of being attached to wealth, country, relatives, caste, and so on, those who are steadfast in seeking sublime grace, the red lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, the abundant giver of grace who dwells in Aruṇācalam, will subside in the ocean of bliss, achieving destruction of ignorance on earth, and always experiencing grace like the rays of a newly risen sun. So there are so many words in this verse that Muruganar has borrowed. Firstly, with a heart that is always seeking clarity. Then also he describes Arunachala as karuṇā, the abundant giver of grace. And also that taruṇā aruna, the newly risen sun, like the rays of a newly risen sun. So there are many allusions in this verse, that is in about this pāyiram composed by Muruganar, to this verse 3 of Aruṇācala, which is a very, very great assurance to us. If we are always seeking clarity, that is the clarity of pure awareness, to the extent to which we're truly seeking clarity, we will be thereby bereft of desire for anything else, and consequently will also be bereft of, will be free from a mental delusion of being attached to wealth or country or relatives or caste or any of these things. And so, if we are steadfast in seeking that grace, the grace of the red lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, his grace is itself for clarity, but we're seeking in our own heart, is the implication. And that Supreme Lord is the abundant giver of grace, karaṇā, and he dwells in Aruṇācalam. That is, he dwells in Arunachala as Arunachala, is the implication. Just like we feel, I am in this body and I am this body. Arunachala dwells in Arunachala as Arunachala. So if we are always seeking that grace, we will subside and drown in the ocean of bliss, thereby achieving the destruction of darkness. That means the darkness of self-ignorance, namely ego, even while living on earth. And thereby we will always experience grace, which is the light that is always shining, dispelling darkness. Like it dispels darkness like the rays of the newly risen sun. So this is that's in this verse 3 of Aruṇācala, Bhagavan is giving us a very great assurance. If we are always longing for his grace and always seeking clarity in our heart, we will certainly achieve what we are seeking. Bhagavan has given us this assurance here. So however feeble we may feel our attempts to turn within, so long as we keep on trying, we are going in the right direction, and success is on this path is assured. All that is required is, as Bhagavan often said, all that is required is perseverance. We just need to keep on trying. However much of a struggle it may be, we need to keep on trying to turn our attention back within. And then the next phrase, I'll have to skip through these things a bit quickly because I won't be able to finish in time. Paravudal poruḻāhak is a little bit difficult phrase to exactly convey, but we can take it, that is the exact meaning is a bit difficult to convey in English, but we can just take it to mean he composed it for the sake of it being a means of praise or prayer to Arunachala. And then we come to Muruganar's description of Bhagavan. Karunakara Muni Ramanariyan. Karunakara, Karuna means grace. Akara means bestower or abundant giver, or abundance, or abode, or source, or origin, or mine. Akara, for example, a mine where you get precious gems or something is akara. So the place, it implies a source in this context, or the one who gives. Muruganar interprets karuṇākara as ocean of grace, and also as the abode or mine or storehouse of grace. Sadhuam interprets it as the form of grace in the sense of the embodiment or swarupa or very nature of grace. Because though akara does not literally mean either ocean or form, since it is the source and abundant giver of grace, it can aptly be described as the ocean of grace and also as the very embodiment of grace, the very form of grace. Muruganar also points out another meaning of karuṇākara, that is karam. Karam also means hand. So it also is used to refer to the rays of light, so it, or to light itself. So another meaning of karuṇākara is the light of awareness. That is another meaning of it, but it is the light of karuna. That is, karam here can imply the light of awareness. Karuṇākara therefore means the light of grace, which is the light of pure awareness that is always shining in our heart as I am. Muni means a sage or wise person. And Muruganar gives a nice explanation for it, very brief. He just says, the Muni means manana silan. Manana silan means one whose nature is to think deeply, or one who has the virtue of thinking deeply. The reason Muruganar gives this, interprets Muni in this way, is Muni and Manana, they're both Sanskrit nouns, but derived from the verbal root man, which means to think or consider. So manana means deep, careful, and critical thinking or consideration or reflection. And Muni means one whose nature is to do manana. So deep thinking, manana, and deep contemplation, nididhyasana, go hand in hand. That is, only people who are deep thinking people will be drawn to this path of self-investigation, which is nididhyasana means deep contemplation, but in the context of Bhagavan teachings, nididhyasana means contemplation on what is deep inside our heart, namely ourself. So it's another term for self-investigation. So manana and self-investigation go hand in hand, because if we think deeply and critically about our experience of ourself and everything else, it will certainly lead us to the conclusion, but before knowing the reality of anything else, we first need to investigate and know the reality of ourself, because we are the knower and all other things are known by us. So things that are known depend for their seeming existence upon the knower of them. So if we do not know the reality of ourselves, we cannot know the reality of anything else. So Bhagavan was by nature a Muni from childhood. Even as a child, he thought deeply about life and death. For example, when he was a 12-year-old boy, his father passed away. And everyone was weeping, and Bhagavan saw the body of his father lying there on a bench before being taken away to be cremated. And he was puzzled. Why are they all weeping and saying that my father has gone when I can see my father here? So he thought deeply about him. Then he understood. I now know the I in me. My father's I has left his body. That is the difference between a living body and a dead body. So that deep thinking was there in him even as a child, and that deep thinking led to that day when he had that intense fear of death. Instead of letting his mind go outwards to think about anything else, the deep manana he had been doing earlier turned his mind back within to go deep, to look deep within his own heart to see, when this body dies, will I also die? And by going deep within, he thereby merged and became one with Arunachala, as he always eternally was and is. It's a very appropriate this is a very nice, though Muruganar gives just a few simple words. Muni means muni, manana silam, one whose nature is to think deeply. There's actually a lot of implied meaning in this. So Muni is a very appropriate title for Bhagavan, because Bhagavan, from childhood, he thought deeply about these things, and because his deep thinking led to deep investigation, and thereby he merged back in his heart, back into the depth of his own heart. And then finally, the word Aryan. Aryan is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit word Arya, which means one who is noble, honorable, eminent, revered, excellent, learned, or wise. It can also mean Acharya, which means a spiritual preceptor or guru. Therefore, Karunākara Muni Nayakan, Karunākara Muni Ramanariyan means the noble sage Ramana, or sage Ramana Guru, who is the abundant giver of grace, the source of grace, the abode of grace, the ocean of grace, or the embodiment of grace. Then the next phrase is Uvaheyanal Soliyadu, which Uvaheyanal means it's an instrumental case form of Uvahe, which means joy, exaltation, ecstasy, euphoria, or love. So it means by joy or with love. And Soliyadu means what he said. In this context, it implies what he sang. So this song is what Bhagavan sang with great joy and great love, for the sake of, as a prayer for those who are seeking clarity. And then Gatiyaha, Gati is a Sanskrit word, but means a way, path, means, or also means, it also means a refuge. And aha means as. So Gatiyaha means as a means or way or path or refuge. And Muruganar also explains that Gati implies showing the way or a guide on the path. So Gatiyaha implies taking this song as a means, a refuge, a support and a guide, showing us the way to sink deep within ourselves and thereby eradicate ego. And then we come to the final line, which is the main clause. Arunachalam mena ahame arivodum arva shivanula halvare. Those who sink in the heart, it links with the previous thing, taking this song as a means or as a support, as a guide, those who sink in the heart with awareness as Arunachalam will certainly rule the world of Shiva. The subject of this clause is Arunachalam ena ahame arivodum arva, those who sink in the heart with awareness as Arunachalam. But ahame has a double meaning in this context. Aham is a Tamil word that means inside, mind, heart, or home. So ahame can mean sink in the heart. In this context, Muruganar explained that aham means the heart in the sense of the source of the mind. That is the source from which we've risen, the source from which ego has risen. He says pirapidam. Pirapidam is a term Bhagavan uses, the birthplace of the mind. So it means our real nature. In one sense, it also means, it's also the pronoun I. So ahame means both in the mind or heart and also only I. As I say, if we take it to mean heart, Muruganar explains that means the birthplace of the mind. In other words, the source from which we've risen, which is our own real nature. So the implication is that taking this song as a guide and support, the mind must sink with awareness back into the source from which it rose. With awareness here implies with keen and vigilant self-attentiveness. Obviously, we don't have to be aware of anything else. What do we need to be aware of? We need to be aware of ourselves. We need to be attentively aware of ourselves. So that's the implication of arivodam. Because it's only when we subside and merge back into the heart as a result of being keenly self-attentive that ego will be eradicated. And regarding the second of the two meanings, taking aham as I, Muruganar says there's an intensifying suffix. Ahame means only I or I alone, but he said that suffix a can be transposed from aham to arunachalam, in which case arunachalam ena ahame would be construed as arunachalam aham ena, which means that Arunachala is I alone. So another meaning is those who sink in the heart with awareness that Arunachala is that Arunachala alone is I. That is, I is nothing other than Arunachala. What is shining in our heart as I, that is Arunachala. Remove the adjuncts, but make this I seem to be ego. Remove the adjuncts, and what remains is Arunachala, the pure I. Therefore, Arunachala mena ahame, which is incidentally, this is a phrase that Muruganar borrows from the opening words of the first verse of Akṣaramaṇamālai, as we will see later on. It means both as Arunachala in the heart and that Arunachala is only I. So if we incorporate both these meanings, Arunachala mena ahame arivodum arva implies those who sink in the heart with awareness that Arunachalam is only I, or that Arunachalam alone is I. Those who sink thus will certainly rule or take charge of the world of Shiva, as Muruganar concludes this verse by saying. The implication of this, what does he mean by saying they will rule the world of Shiva? What is the world of Shiva? The world of Shiva is the heart. And the one who rules or is in charge of the heart is the heart itself, which is Arunachala Shiva. So the implication here is that when we finally sink into the heart with clear awareness that I is not anything other than Arunachalam, we will thereby lose ourselves entirely in the heart and remain as the heart itself. This is the state of complete surrender or eradication of ego, which we can achieve only by sinking deep within ourselves by means of keen and steady self-attentiveness. And for helping us to sink thus, there is no greater guide, aid, or support than this love-infused song given to us by Karunākara Muni Ramanarian, our great guru and acharya, the noble sage Ramana, the abundant giver of grace. And then we come to the kāppu. This is the invocation. I'll just play Sadhuam singing this. This is Bhagavan's invocation. The meaning of this verse, Arunachala Varaketra Akṣaramaṇamālai Satra Karunā Karaganapatiye Karamalika Paye, is Bhagavan is addressing Ganapati. That Ganapati is often known as Ganesha, or is probably more familiar to people in the West as Ganesha. Also, he's called Vinayaka. So Bhagavan addresses him. Ganapati, giver of grace, may you protect, graciously giving a hand to sing Akṣaramaṇamālai to be fitting for the bridegroom Arunachala. That the implication of that is, Ganapati, giver of grace, may you protect this undertaking graciously giving a hand to help me sing Akṣaramaṇamālai so that it may be fitting or suitable for or to adorn the bridegroom Arunachala. The Arunachala Varaku is a dative case form of Varan, which means a great person, Lord, God, or in this context, a bridegroom or husband. Etra means what is suitable or fitting. So Arunachala Varaketra means to be fitting or so that it may be suitable for the bridegroom Arunachala. Muruganar also points out another thing here. Arunachala Varaku can also be split as Arunachala Araku. Araku is a dative case form of Aran, which is a Tamil form of the Sanskrit word Hara, which is the name of Shiva and means one who destroys or takes away. Hara is derived from a verb, which means to take away, remove, seize, steal, rob, deprive of, destroy, or annihilate. So Arunachala Araku means for Arunachala Hara or for Arunachala Shiva. Arunachala is called Hara because he steals our heart and annihilates ego. So that's, Muruganar often brings out very nice secondary meanings, but also very apt meanings. So the bridegroom Arunachala is nothing but Hara himself. And the name Hara is very much associated with Arunachala. If you attend any festival, like Deepam festival in Tiruvannamalai, if you're in the temple, people will be singing Annamalai Karohara. That is Harohara Arunachala. So this name Hara is very, very much associated with Arunachala because Arunachala is the ultimate thief, the thief who steals our heart and annihilates ego, as Bhagavan makes very, very clear in so many verses of Akṣaramaṇa, how he's this arch thief Arunachala has stolen his heart. And Satra means to proclaim or declare or explain or speak. And in this context, it implies to sing or to compose in the sense of to compose a song or poem. Muruganar also explains another meaning. He says that Satra can also be taken to be a poetic variant of Sata, which means to adorn, because if a garland is to adorn Arunachala, this garland of verses is woven to adorn the bridegroom Arunachala. And I already explained earlier about the meaning of karuṇā. It means the abundant giver of grace, the abundance of grace or the source of grace. But karam also means hand. So in this, since Bhagavan is praying in this verse for Ganapati to give him a helping hand, karam, we can also take karuṇākara to mean hand of grace, implying that the hands of Ganapati are hands of grace. Then the next word is the verb aruli. It's actually an adverbial participle of the verb arul, which means to be gracious, kind, benevolent, compassionate, or to give, speak, or command graciously. So in this context, aruli means giving graciously. And arul is a noun that means grace. It's both. Arul is both a verb and also a noun that means grace or benevolence, particularly in the sense of divine grace. And as we shall see in later verses, it is one of Bhagavan's favorite words. He uses it either as a verb or as a noun about 60 times in Akṣaramaṇamālai. So it's such a favorite word of his. Because Akṣaramaṇamālai is all about grace. Grace is all important. And the final word of this verse is kāppaye, which is an intensified form of kāpai, which is a second person singular imperative or optative form of kā, which means to protect, safeguard, shelter, watch over, rescue, or save. So kāppaye means may you protect. And in this context, it implies may you protect this undertaking, this composition of Akṣaramaṇamālai, watching over my composition, watching over my composing of it. So therefore, arali kāppaye means may you protect, graciously giving a hand, which implies may you protect this undertaking, graciously giving a hand to help me compose this song. We can infer that there are two reasons why Bhagavan composed this verse. Firstly, he did so to honor an ancient tradition of composing such a kāppu addressed to Ganapati, invoking his protection before beginning to compose any text. Because Ganapati, who is also known as Ganesha or Vinayaka, is revered not only by Hindus, but also by Buddhists and Jains as the remover of obstacles and the protector of all undertakings, whether worldly or spiritual. So that's one reason Bhagavan is honoring that ancient tradition. Secondly, as Muruganar points out, Ganapati, who is the eldest son of Lord Shiva, facilitated the marriage of Bali with Skanda, his younger brother. That is the story of how Bali and Skanda got married. Ganapati, because Skanda wanted Bali, who considered herself of a very low origin because she was a hunter princess. So she didn't feel herself worthy of Skanda. So Ganapati appeared as a wild elephant to frighten her. And so she ran to Skanda to take refuge under his protection. And that's how the marriage was brought about, because he then revealed his true nature, who he really was, and they got married. So Muruganar says it's particularly appropriate that Ganapati should protect and lend a helping hand in the composition of this song, which facilitates the sacred matrimony or union of devotees with his father, Arunachala Shiva. And so those are prefatory verses. I've spoken for more than an hour, but I will continue because we now come to one of the most important verses of the whole text, which is the first verse. Can I say something? Can I just ask something? If I am to talk about this first verse now, I've already talked for more than an hour, and it may well be another hour or more for me to talk about this verse. Should I keep this for next time, or shall I continue talking? If I continue talking, it'll leave not so much time for questions. So we could perhaps keep this for next time, or
why not? Let's do that. Maybe
because even if it takes us longer, this is such an important and such a wonderful work. Even if it takes us a bit longer to get through all the verses, it doesn't matter. Let's go through them as deeply as they deserve.
Yes.
But anyway, before finishing, I will just play as a prelude to the next one. I'll just play the refrain and Sadhu Om singing the first verse. So that's the first two verses. Next time, the meeting in 2 weeks, I'll talk about the first verse, and then next month we'll go on to the subsequent verses. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Śrī Aruṇācala Ramanaaya.